My name is Alina Carter. I'm 30 years old. And on the morning I got married, I thought the hardest thing I would have to do that day was walk down the aisle without crying. I was wrong, because less than 10 minutes before my wedding ceremony began, my father slapped me across the face. Not in private. Not behind a closed door. He did it in front of my bridesmaids, 2 relatives, the wedding coordinator, and the woman who had been helping me adjust my veil. For a few seconds, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. I could hear the music from the reception hall playing faintly through the doors. My cheek burned. My eyes filled with tears. And my father, Richard Carter, looked at me as if I were the one who had done something unforgivable. Then my fiancé, Daniel, appeared at the doorway. He looked at my father, then at me. And finally, with a voice so calm that it frightened everyone in the room, he said, "Richard, you just made the biggest mistake of your life." My father laughed. At least, he tried to. "You don't threaten me in my own daughter's wedding." Daniel didn't raise his voice. "I'm not threatening you." He took one step forward. "I'm warning you." What my father didn't know was that Daniel already knew why he'd been pressuring me for weeks. He knew about the documents. He knew about the money. And most importantly, he knew that the slap had nothing to do with the father losing his temper. My father had hit me because I had refused to sign something. Something that could have changed all of our lives. And by the end of that day, my father's carefully protected reputation would begin falling apart. But before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and what time it is for you right now. Because I want to know how far this story travels. My father had always been the strongest personality in our family. He owned Carter Construction, a company my grandfather had started almost 40 years earlier. From the outside, we looked like the perfect family. My father was successful, my mother was elegant and quiet. My younger brother, Marcus, worked in the family business. And I was the daughter who had chosen a completely different career. I worked as a financial compliance consultant. My father used to joke that I spent my life looking for problems that didn't exist. "You should work for me," he'd tell me. "You'd make twice the money." I always smiled, but I knew what he really meant. He wanted me inside his world. He wanted access to my professional knowledge. And more than anything, he wanted me to trust him without asking questions. That had always been the rule in our family. Trust Dad. Don't challenge Dad. Don't embarrass Dad. And never ever make a family disagreement public. For years, I followed those rules. Until 3 weeks before my wedding. That's when my father walked into my apartment carrying a black folder. He placed it on my kitchen table. "I need your signature." I opened it. "What is it?" "Routine paperwork." I started reading. It wasn't routine. It was an authorization agreement connected to a piece of commercial property my grandmother had left to me. The property wasn't enormous. But it was valuable. Very valuable. My father wanted to use it as collateral for a new construction project. I looked at him. Why wasn't I told about this? He shrugged. Because it's family business. I'm still the legal owner. And I'm still your father. That was his answer. I closed the folder. "I'm not signing this today." His smile disappeared. "Elena, I'm going to have my attorney review it." "You don't need an attorney." "That makes me want one even more." He stood up. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said something I would remember for a very long time. "You've changed since you met Daniel." I stared at him. "What does Daniel have to do with this?" "Everything." My father believed Daniel was taking me away from the family. What he didn't understand was that Daniel wasn't controlling me. He was teaching me that I was allowed to make decisions without being afraid of my father's reaction. 2 days later, Daniel noticed I was distracted. We were sitting at a restaurant after work. He reached across the table. "What's going on?" I hesitated. Then I told him. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he asked one question. "Did you sign anything?" "No." "Good. That's it. No dramatic speech, no attempt to fight my father. Just one word. Good. Then he asked to see the paperwork. I showed it to him. Daniel had spent years working in corporate risk management before moving into aviation operations. He knew enough about contracts to recognize when something didn't look right. He read the agreement twice. Then he looked at me. Elena, this isn't just permission to use the property. I know. No. I don't think you do. He pointed to one paragraph. This gives the company broad authority if the project defaults. My stomach tightened. What happens if it defaults? They could pursue the property. I stared at the page. My father hadn't asked me to help the family. He had asked me to put one of my most valuable assets at risk. And he had called it routine paperwork. The next morning, I told him I wouldn't sign. That's when everything changed. He stopped calling me sweetheart. He stopped asking about the wedding. And suddenly, every conversation became about loyalty. You wouldn't do this to your own family. You're letting your future husband come between us. Your grandfather would be ashamed. I heard all of it. But I still said no. Then came the wedding morning. I woke up before sunrise. I remember looking at my dress hanging beside the window. For a few minutes, everything felt peaceful. My bridesmaid, Sophie, was curling her hair. My mother was sitting quietly in the corner, and I thought about how strange it was that after months of planning, the day had finally arrived. Then someone knocked. My father walked in. He was wearing his wedding suit. He closed the door behind him. 5 minutes, he said. I already knew. No? He held out the folder. Sign it. Not today. Elena, this is your last chance. I'm not signing something I haven't had independently reviewed. His jaw tightened. You are humiliating me. I'm protecting myself. You are destroying this family. No. I'm refusing to risk my property. He stepped closer. Daniel has poisoned you against us. Daniel didn't tell me to say no. I looked directly at my father. I read the document myself. That was when he lost control. His hand moved. The slap came so quickly that I barely understood what had happened. My head turned. The room went silent. I touched my cheek. My father stared at me. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel afraid of him. I felt disappointed. Then Daniel appeared. He must have heard the commotion from the hallway. He looked at my face. Then at my father, and said, "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." My father stepped toward him. "Stay out of this." Daniel didn't move. "This became my business when you put your hands on my future wife." My father scoffed. "You're not married yet." Daniel looked at me. "Do you still want to marry me?" I nodded. "Then we're getting married." He turned back toward my father. "But we're not doing it your way." My father didn't understand. Neither did I. Not yet. Because Daniel had already made a decision. He had called someone. And that someone was waiting outside. Her name was Patricia Monroe. She was an independent attorney who had represented several major construction lenders in our city. She wasn't my father's lawyer. She wasn't Daniel's lawyer. She was there because Daniel had asked her to review something 2 days earlier. Something he hadn't told me about. The moment Patricia entered the room, my father froze. "Why is she here?" Daniel answered. "Because I wanted someone independent to look at the agreement." My father turned toward me. "You brought a lawyer to your own wedding?" "No," I said. "Daniel did." Patricia opened her briefcase. "I've reviewed the agreement." My father immediately became defensive. "This is a private family matter." Patricia shook her head. It stopped being private when a legal owner was pressured to sign a financing authorization without independent review. My father stared at her. Then, she said something that changed the entire room. "There's another problem." She placed a second document on the table. This version was submitted to the lender last week. I looked at it. My signature was typed at the bottom. Not handwritten. But my name was there. Underneath it were the words "Owner approval confirmed." My stomach dropped. "I never approved this." "I know," Patricia said. My father immediately stepped in. It's a draft. Then why was it submitted to the lender? He didn't answer. My mother finally spoke. Richard. He turned toward her. Don't. She looked frightened. But then she said, did you forge her approval? My father didn't respond. And that silence told me everything. The wedding ceremony was delayed. Guests were moved into the reception area. My mother cried. My brother Marcus disappeared, and my father kept insisting that everyone was overreacting. But Daniel wasn't interested in arguing. He was documenting. Emails, contracts, messages, versions of the financing agreement. Everything. By noon, Patricia had discovered something else. The property wasn't just being used as collateral, it was being used to secure a loan far larger than my father had originally told me. Almost 18 million. And if the project failed, my property could have been pulled into the dispute. My father had never intended to tell me that. He needed my signature first. Then he intended to explain later. I finally understood why he had been so desperate, but I still didn't understand why he had chosen my wedding day to force the issue. Then Marcus came back. He looked pale. He pulled me aside. Elena, Dad has been lying to everyone. What do you mean? The project is already in trouble. He showed me his phone. There were emails from contractors demanding overdue payments. A lender requesting updated financial statements. And a message from an accountant asking why several projected expenses had been moved into the following quarter. Marcus whispered. Has been covering the cash shortage with new deposits. My heart sank. The company wasn't healthy. My father was trying to keep the appearance of success alive long enough to secure another round of financing. And my property was part of the plan. The wedding eventually continued. Not because everything was okay, but because Daniel looked at me and said, do you still want this day? I looked around. The flowers were still there. The music was still playing. The people who loved me were still waiting. Yes. So I walked down the aisle. My father was not standing beside me. Daniel was waiting at the front. And when I reached him, he took my hands. No speeches. No revenge. Just one quiet sentence. You're safe. We got married that afternoon. But my father's problems had only begun. The following Monday, Patricia contacted the lender. She didn't accuse anyone. She simply informed them that I had never authorized the document containing my supposed approval. The lender froze the financing. The construction project stopped. My father's company was suddenly under review. And then the calls started, first from my father, then from his lawyer, then from people I'd never heard of. Everyone wanted the same thing, my silence. My father offered to give me more money. Then he offered me a position at the company. Then he said he'd transfer ownership of another property to me. Finally, he threatened me. You don't understand what happens if this company collapses. I answered. I understand exactly what happens. Thousands of people depend on me. Then you should have protected the company. He went silent. You think you're better than me now? Numb. Then why are you doing this? Because you're asking me to protect you from consequences that belong to you. He hung up. 3 days later, Marcus called. He had been fired. My father claimed Marcus had betrayed the family by showing me the emails. But Marcus told me the truth. He had found the financial inconsistencies months earlier. He had stayed silent because he was afraid. Now he wasn't. I should have told you sooner, he said. Why didn't you? Because Dad made me believe that if the company failed, it would be our fault. I understood. That was how my father controlled people. He didn't always need threats. Sometimes he used guilt. Sometimes he used money. Sometimes he used love. And sometimes he mixed all three together until you couldn't tell which one was real. Over the next several weeks, the investigation continued. My father's company wasn't destroyed overnight. That would have been too easy. Instead, the truth came out piece by piece. The financial projections had been manipulated. The lender had not received the complete risk disclosures. My ownership approval had been falsely represented. and several employees admitted that they had been pressured to make bad news disappear from internal reports. My father insisted everyone was lying. Then his own accountant testified. That was the moment he finally lost control. The accountant produced emails showing my father had instructed employees to keep the numbers clean until the financing closes. My father had always said he never asked anyone to lie. Technically, maybe he hadn't used the word lie, but everyone understood what he meant. The board removed him from day-to-day operations. The lender appointed an independent monitor. The project was restructured, and my property was formally removed from the financing package. For the first time, I owned something my father couldn't use as leverage. My own future. But the hardest part wasn't the business. It was my mother. She called me one night. "Your father wants to see you." I asked why. "He wants to apologize." I wasn't ready. Months passed. Eventually I agreed. We met at a quiet restaurant. My father looked different. Not broken. Not helpless. Just older. He sat across from me. I was wrong. I didn't answer, he continued. "I kept telling myself that I was protecting what your grandfather built." "Maybe you were." He looked surprised. "But somewhere along the way," I continued, "you stopped protecting the company and started protecting yourself." He lowered his eyes. "I know." Then he said something I never expected. "The slap wasn't about the contract." I waited. "It was because you said no to me." That sentence stayed with me. Because that was the truth. He hadn't hit me because of a piece of paper. He had hit me because, for the first time, his daughter had said no and meant it. "I can't forgive you yet," I told him. He nodded. "I understand. But I don't hate you." He looked up. "That's enough for now." A year passed. Daniel and I built our life together. We moved into a small house outside the city. Nothing extravagant. Nothing that impressed my father. But it was ours. I started my own consulting firm. Marcus found work with another construction company. My mother finally began making decisions without asking my father first. And my relationship with my father became something different. Not perfect. Not close. But honest. There were still boundaries. He could not speak to me disrespectfully. He could not involve my marriage in business disagreements. And he could never again use money as a weapon against me. The strangest thing happened 1 year after my wedding. My father sent me a wedding anniversary card. Inside he wrote, "I hope you understand now that I was afraid of losing you." I read it twice. Then I wrote back, "You didn't lose me because I got married. You almost lost me because you believed loving me gave you the right to control me." I didn't know if he would understand. But he did. A week later, he replied with only one sentence. "You're right." Maybe that was the beginning. Not forgiveness. Not forgetting. Just accountability. Looking back, the slap at my wedding wasn't the moment my life fell apart. It was the moment the life my father had designed for me finally ended. For years, I believed being a good daughter meant keeping the peace. I believed saying no made me selfish. I believed protecting the family meant protecting the person who had the most power. I was wrong. Family loyalty should never require you to surrender your dignity. Love should never require blind obedience. And forgiveness should never mean pretending something didn't happen. My husband didn't save me that day by fighting my father. He saved me by reminding me that I had a choice. That distinction changed everything. Daniel never told me what decision to make. He simply stood beside me while I made it. And that's what real support looked like. My father once believed the biggest mistake of his life was failing to get my signature. He was wrong. His biggest mistake happened when he slapped me at my own wedding. Because that was the moment everyone finally saw what I had spent years trying not to see. The powerful man everyone admired was also the father who believed his daughter's obedience was more important than her freedom. And once that truth became visible, he couldn't hide behind money, reputation, or family anymore. I didn't destroy my father's life. I simply stopped protecting him from the consequences of his own choices. And sometimes, that is the hardest lesson to learn. You don't have to scream. You don't have to get revenge. You don't have to destroy someone who hurt you. Sometimes you just have to stop signing. Stop explaining. Stop apologizing. And finally say, no. Because the right people will respect your boundary. And the people who only loved your obedience will reveal themselves. My name is Elena Carter. And I walked into my wedding believing I was becoming someone's wife. I walked out realizing something much more important. I was finally becoming my own person. If this story touched you, please like the video and subscribe for more powerful stories about family, betrayal, courage, and second chances. And remember, sometimes saying no is not the end of a relationship, it's the beginning of respecting yourself.